Everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Answers Podcast. And with me, of course, is Dr. Erica Riggleman, my partner in crime. And we are today going to talk about the 10 things that you are doing that may be making your hypothyroid or Hashimoto's condition worse. So, Dr. Erica, how are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm excited about this talk because, or this podcast, just because of the fact that when people come in, they have these kind of regimens that they're already doing that they think are really trying to help their thyroid function, or they think they're doing a really good job, or that it's really healthy. And oftentimes that may be one thing that's contributing to them staying ill or staying sick or ruining their thyroid physiology. And so, going through these, some of these may be eye-opening. So when, if you're doing some of these things that we mentioned, keep an open mind, because people like to think that some of these things are the best things for them. So keeping an open mind when you listen to this podcast, I think is going to be key.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those key things that's important to point out is that we're not saying that you're intentionally doing something wrong, but a lot of times we do things because we've read or we've heard, or our doctor told us that this does this. And it doesn't always happen that way. And there's often things that we do that do a benefit, but there's also unintended consequences. I mean, that's the story with medications, right? So a medication, if you have high blood pressure, a medication can lower your blood pressure. I mean, it's what it does. But there's unintended consequences of that can contribute to sickness or illness. So we're going to talk about some of these things. They may go against the grain of what you've heard, but what we're saying is pretty much backed up by some of the more recent clinical research and even some of the older research that's available, but it may not be conventional wisdom currently. Okay. So Dr. Erica, I'm going to let you start with number one. So what's the number one thing that as people might be doing that could be making their hypothyroid or Hashimoto's condition worse?
One of the biggest things that I see when patients come in to me who have issues is that they're eating whole grains. They've been told by their doctors or, the food pyramid that they have to consume so many whole grains in their diet. And those can even be gluten-free grains. It doesn't have to be wheat related, but a lot of people, their breakfast consumes of oatmeal, and they're eating whole wheat bread, and, they're eating whole wheat pasta or rice for dinner. And we know, and we've talked about on previous podcasts, that carbohydrates, when they're broken down, whether they're gluten-free or not, produce byproducts that your body has to counterbalance and can actually raise inflammation. We know the inflammation really can affect the thyroid pathway, whether that's being in the conversion side or even at the cellular level. And so people think that if they remove the grains from their diet, they're going to be constipated. And, that's a big thing for a lot of patients who have hypothyroidism, is that, constipation is an issue. So they really ramp up their fiber, which, is a good thing to help move move stuff through the bowels. But on the flip side of it, that also could be really affecting your thyroid physiology. So, we've talked about on here, there's a fine balance between, you want good carbohydrates. There's a time and a place for carbohydrates, but we also want to be trying to negate some of that inflammatory process of, we know that the wheat is very toxic to the body. We know it can create leaky gut, inflammation, and that whole cascade that can really affect the thyroid. So yeah, you want to focus on, good carbohydrates and fibrous stuff, the fibrous vegetables, maybe some sweet potatoes here and there. And so working on that lower carb diet, but still getting enough of those grains in there so that you can have that fiber moving through the digestive tract.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'll just add to that many people, when they talk about that when they eat the whole grains, it helps keep them regular. What might be keeping them regular is not really being regular, but the fact that those foods may be inflaming their GI tract and forcing their bowels to move versus having normal movement of their bowels. So yeah, I think if the focus is on healthy carbohydrate-based foods, tubers and fruits, and if you're shopping in that outer section of the grocery store, that's probably where you want to get most of your starches and carbohydrates from, and not the middle section, which is loaded with processed foods and toxins and glyphosate and all kinds of fun stuff that can really create some issues. All right, good. I guess I'll take the number 2, okay? And so for the second thing that you may be doing that may be creating some compromising your thyroid physiology, many people today are diagnosed with low vitamin D. And so are put on high levels of vitamin D supplements. And I know in the past, I did it too. It was kind of how we were taught that if 25 OHD is low, then they have a vitamin D deficiency. But we can't determine whether somebody is vitamin D deficient just by looking at your 25 OHD. So if you're supporting if you're taking vitamin D support because just your doctor just looked at 25 OHD and it was low, you may actually be contributing to the problem. Under stress and inflammatory conditions, 25 OHD, which is the inactive form, is converted to 125 OHD. And 125 OHD will increase inflammation. It'll stimulate the immune system. And so if you are taking high load vitamin D, it may not be, and your vitamin, especially if your vitamin D is still low, it's not that you're deficient. Your body's quickly converting it to the 125 OHD, which is trying to ramp up your immune system to try and kill something, okay? And then the other piece of that is that the bacteria and the pathogens, the organisms have figured out how to deactivate vitamin D receptor. So you're ramping up your vitamin D to try and stimulate this thing called the vitamin D receptor to help stimulate your immune system. The bacteria or the viruses that your immune system's trying to fight are turning that switch off. And then that high level of vitamin 125D that's circulating in your bloodstream is contributing to bone decalcification or the osteoporosis or osteopenic condition. So it's really, if you're going to take vitamin D, you really need to understand what both 25 and 125 values are. And you need to know that you're not over converting. So my thought process on this is really, we want to kind of keep that, if that 125 value, if your 125 value is much higher than the 25 value, then you're probably having this overactivation. At this point, I like that 125 OHD really not to be much higher than 55 if I'm going to supplement somebody. So if I see that it's really jumped over 55, then I know I've got this upregulation, and I can give them all the vitamin D in the world, and I'm probably contributing to issues, not necessarily helping their condition.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can I get that pretty good? And probably one of the best ways you can get natural vitamin D, which behaves a little bit differently than what we consume, is just go out and get sunlight. I mean, go out, get your body exposed to sunlight, keep it, you don't have to put any lotion or any of those things on it necessarily. Just get a little bit of pinking of the skin, and you've gotten plenty. More than likely, you've gotten plenty. As long as all the conversion mechanisms work, you got your vitamin D.
Yeah,
Right?
I think in our society, people are afraid to be out in the sun because, skin cancer is running rampant, everywhere. People are being diagnosed with it. So there's that fear. So they're afraid to be even out in the sun for, 5 seconds without sunscreen on. And so most people are lathering it up. You may be out in the sun, but if you've got your sunscreen all over your body, you're not getting those sun rays. And so, and it doesn't have to be very long. I mean, you could be outside for 5 to 10 minutes, just getting a little bit of direct sunlight on the skin. And it also, I mean, just for the fact of vitamin D, being exposed to the sunlight is very good for overall health. And, obviously we know from the adrenal side of it, you want, natural sunlight to help regulate your circadian rhythm. So getting some sunlight, I think is very, very important.
Yeah. So to finish that topic off, if you're taking supplemental vitamin D, you might, and you're not feeling dramatically better, or you're still struggling with some issues, you might want to get both 25. You would want to get both 25 and 125 taken at your next blood test, or ask your doctor to make sure he takes both. Mm-hmm. If your 25 is way higher than your 125, you likely have a magnesium deficiency, so you're having a hard time converting the 25 to 125. If your 125 is way higher than your 25, you probably don't want to be taking high dose vitamin D. Go out, get sunlight, and let your body do with that vitamin D what it's supposed to do, so you're not contributing to ramping up your inflammatory condition more than you need to, and not driving osteopenia and osteoporosis from overconsumption. Okay. So
Good.
Dr. Erica, you're on number 3. What's the third thing?
Number 3, I would say would be drinking water from a water bottle. A lot of patients will, they know that tap water, I mean, that's a common thing most people know these days, is that you shouldn't be drinking water from the tap. So people, in convenience, they go to water bottles. It's very easy to buy a huge case of water at Costco, keep it in your car or keep it in the fridge and just have it on the go. We know that, if the water is in plastic, if it's a plastic water bottle, you don't know how that actually got to the store, where it was stored at, how you're storing it. We know that anytime that you're heating plastic, even if it's just sitting in a hot car, that plastic itself are estrogen-like components and can cause a lot of estrogen issues in the body, can also create toxicity in the liver. Those toxins filter into the water. And then when you're constantly drinking that, and if that's your only source of water, you may be bombarding your body with these estrogen-like components on a daily basis. I know it's very convenient. So on the flip side of it, what you really want to be doing is investing in a good water filter, whether that's a standalone water filter or a whole house water filter, and then purchasing glass water bottles. You can find them on Amazon. I even have one right here. I have a glass water bottle that I put water in, and I drink that all day long. So you have the convenience of being able to take that on the go. The water filter that I really, really like is the Berkey water filter. I have one that sits on my countertop, and once I have filtered through, I keep it in the fridge. In a glass container. So again, even if it's in the fridge, you really want to try to be avoiding the plastic component of that. And having a few of these on the go to be able to take with you is huge, because we want you to drink water. So, we don't want you to avoid water just because you're trying to avoid plastic water bottles, and try to really minimize the amount of water you're drinking from that plastic, to overall help. Because in our society, we're being bombarded by estrogen-like components at all times from our beauty products, but you don't want to be adding to that by drinking water from plastic.
And I agree with all those things. I think one of those things that's really important, make sure that if you're moving to a filtered water process, you understand what type of filtration it's doing. There's lots of different ones. One of the biggest challenges, we sometimes lose the minerals when we're doing our filtration. So if it's a system that's depleting minerals, make sure you're putting those things back, because the minerals are key to optimal health and physiology in the body. The other thing is, if you're a person who's drinking city water, tap water, and still filtering it, there are a lot of prescription drugs and hormones that are in that water. So you want to make sure whatever filter system you're getting, that is helping filter those things out. Because if it's not cleaning out the hormones, the medications that are in your city water, part of your health challenge that's creating problems for you is maybe just what you're consuming from your water. There are high levels of estrogens and Riggleman and a whole bunch of other medications that they find after the water's been cleaned in city water, because the cleansing process just doesn't help get rid of those things, right? There are some people that are, when it comes down to plastics, there's new plastics that people talk about are a bit safer. And I think we're finding out that they just have different chemicals in those plastics that we're drinking out of. So glass, definitely probably one of the best things to drink out of. Stainless steel has had its there's people that are pro and con on it. But I think if we're looking at, options as to what to drink out of glass, potentially stainless steel, the two best options, but glass is probably the most inert of the things to be drinking it out of. So definitely some type of filtered water system, definitely some type of glass is better. And if it's inconvenient and you're at a sporting event, you have to grab a plastic bottle of water, that's probably not the end of the world. But in a 80% scenario, focus on drinking filtered, clean, detoxificated water. If it's demineralized, make sure you're taking some extra minerals each day. And that's one of the things I'll talk about, is one of those key things. And I think make sure you're getting it into the system. Okay. So I'm on number 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with, kind of build right on that. And that is people consuming low salt diets.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties right into mineral support, right? Because those two kind of things kind of go together. So many times people who have hypothyroidism are told not to consume iodine, so they shouldn't consume salt, because most of the over-the-counter salts are iodized salts. But salt is critical. And when I'm talking about salt, I'm not talking about sodium chloride, Morton's white table salt that you get. I'm talking about natural salts, sea salts, all these kind of natural Himalayan, yellow, pink, sea salt from, Redmond's real salt, which is like from the salt flats out west. Salt in its natural state is loaded with, I believe, about 79 elements, right? 79 different trace minerals in real salt. And real salt is not sodium and chloride, right? So if you are not consuming salt because you've been told that salt will cause high blood pressure, salt's going to attack your thyroid, switch away from that table salt, but consume sea salts. And one of my favorites is the Redmond's real salt, because it's already cut up, chopped up real fine. What we think, and some of that research is showing, is that many of the challenges we have from mineral deficiencies, because we filter our water, we don't consume, the plants are devoid of minerals because of over farming. What we thought was in broccoli or asparagus or all those things, when it's mass farmed, the nutrient content's less. And when we filter water, typically we lose the minerals in the water. So most people should be consuming on a regular basis, probably somewhere around 2 to 3 teaspoons of real salt, so that they can get all their trace minerals, so they get the sodium that they need, especially if they have edema and swelling in their system. Those natural salts can support not only the edema and swelling, and reduce the water retention. It'll support the adrenal gland. It'll support almost all the natural pathways in the body, and you don't have to be afraid of consuming more salt. So how do you do it? You sprinkle natural, real salt on foods, right? Liberally, don't be worried about it. And then the other thing I try and get my patients to do is just get a teaspoon. You have to build up to this and get tolerant of it, because dumping a teaspoon or 2 of salt in some water and drinking that's like choking in the ocean, right? So I just tell them to get used to putting maybe a 1/4 teaspoon or a teaspoon on their tongue, and then just slug down some water, and it'll wash it down. And now you got all these minerals into the system that you're not getting from your food source, and you're not getting any more from many times what you're filtering in your water process.
Yeah, one thing, especially if you're on a very low carb or ketogenic diet, your salt requirement goes up even more. So if you're already doing that, that you want to be. So any person that comes in that's already on a ketogenic diet, I'm trying to get them first thing in the morning when they wake up, whether it's warm water or cold water, getting some salt into that water to really drink. And the other thing, good way to get salt is bone broth. Adding a good amount of salt to bone broth and sipping that throughout the day is a really good way to get those salts and those minerals into the system as well.
Yeah. All right. So you're on number 5. What do you got?
One thing is going to be, everybody thinks they have to support their good gut bacteria. So whether that be they want to be on a probiotic or they're eating yogurt for that, they think that is like really, really healthy. One of the biggest questions I get asked, whether it's at a seminar or on the internet, is what probiotic do you recommend? Because, we all know that the digestive tract is really important, and we know that the bacteria, we want to nourish it. So people always are taking probiotics nonstop, or they're eating yogurt to try to get that beneficial bacteria. The hard thing with the yogurt is the majority of those yogurts out there that are supporting good bacteria have a lot of sugar in them. And so when you're feeding the bacteria lots of sugar, often you're not promoting the good bacteria. You may be even just promoting bad bacteria, or even candida, some other things inside the digestive tract. And so if you're looking, so this is what I recommend to most patients is, if you're looking to get good bacteria in the digestive tract, trying to get those from fermented foods that are not loaded with sugar are going to be probably a better option. Maybe some making some sauerkraut at home, kimchi, looking to have some more of those fermented vegetables that, give you fiber, but you're getting your probiotics that way, as opposed to trying to get it from the dairy side. Because we know that dairy can often create some issues with the thyroid gland itself. So yes, you're trying to get bacteria, but you're also loading your system with something that's very inflammatory. And then on the probiotic side, I often find when I'm running, stool samples or pathogen tests, that people have too much bacteria, and it's not necessarily a lack of bacteria. It's more of that dysbiosis. So you really want to kind of change the environment. And sometimes taking a probiotic only promotes a small little amount. There's so many different strands of bacteria. And when you're taking a probiotic that only contains one strand, you're not getting that diversity, which is really, really important in the gut.
Yeah, I think we're just learning about the microbe, right? The microbiome, and we can do some tests and kind of see what's overgrowing. But as far as really trying to normalize gut flora and like trying to drive it, if I give this one, everything's going to stabilize. I don't think we're there yet. I think that's kind of naive of us to think that, this one pill is going to fix everything in the gut. And it's not to say that somebody taking a probiotic can't see change in their gut flora and maybe feel better. But is it addressing the real issue? Is it addressing the real cause? Is it going to last if you're not taking it? Maybe not. So I think you're right. The best source of most of this stuff, if you want to support your gut microbiome, is eating foods that are going to promote natural production and let the body kind of have its way with what we're eating. So yeah, sauerkraut, kombucha, or kimchi. Now, and there's a number of other things you can do. There is something called kombucha, right? So do you drink kombucha?
I don't. I don't like tea at all. So I try to drink it because I know the benefit of it, but every single time I drink it, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it. So I prefer more the sauerkraut.
Yeah, so it's got a distinct different taste to it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think if you're going to lean towards that, I know I have patients that make it and bring it in for me. And it's got a different flavor, different taste to it. So it takes some getting used to. If you're going to drink it, you probably want, and with all the fermented foods, if you're not used to eating them, start slow.
Yeah.
Build up, because you may get some gassing, some bloating, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That's just, you're introducing a lot of bacteria sometimes, and your body's not used to it. Mm-hmm. So your body has to adapt to that. So if you drink a whole bottle of kombucha and you haven't done that before, you may have some change in your physiology. Mm-hmm. I caution people that that's not always a bad thing. It could be a sign that potentially maybe that there's some overgrowth of good bacteria in the small bowel, but many times it's just a change in the bacterial load, right? Mm-hmm. But be careful of those drinks too, because again, as Dr. Erica was saying before, sometimes what people do to make them more palatable is add sugars to them, right? And then you've got high sugar along with what's going on. So, do your homework when you're looking at labels. And if you're going to consume these foods, start slow and build up. Mm-hmm. Understand that you might get some little bit of gas or bloating when you first start to do it, if you haven't had those types of foods in a while or ever. If it persists or you get diarrhea or it becomes, it hangs in there for an extended period of time, then, you need to consult somebody else, stop taking it, and consult a functional medicine practitioner, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. What do you got for number 6?
All right. So number 6, this is, I think, a really important thing. We have so many people that are diagnosed with anemias, right? Iron anemias. And I know we were taught when we went through our extended education, not in school, but our extended nutritional education, that iron deficiency was a big thing, and that many people were iron deficient and nothing works without iron. And so if your iron's low, your ferritin's low, if they're low, you need iron support. And iron could be one of the things that's really driving your healthcare problems. So there is, if your doctor just looks at iron and determines that you're iron deficient, they can't really do that, okay? So you may look like your iron's low, but you have to understand what iron's measuring. There's different forms of iron, and one of those, when we measure iron in the blood, that's iron bound to something called transferrin, and that's a bound stable iron. We have a form of iron that's in storage form primarily that we look at on blood work, and that's called ferritin. Ferritin is a tissue storage form of iron. Ferritin should not really be in the blood. It's only because it's a primary storage form. So if you have high ferritin and low iron, but your doctor only tests to see if you have low iron, and they increase your iron load, you may create more storage iron or more toxic damage, and you may see ferritin levels rise. So before you ever take any iron support or supplement based on a low blood iron, you want to have your ferritin levels done. And it's also a good idea to take a look at things like copper and ceruloplasmin and RBC magnesium along with it. And it's really important what's happening with iron when we overload the system. And we see a lot of people with chronic immune inflammatory diseases look anemic on paper, but when you really look at the science and the chemistry of what's going on, they're still iron toxic. But we're not seeing it. So if you look at that ferritin marker, and I won't go any deeper than this from a chemistry perspective, that ferritin marker becomes really important, because what is ferritin? It's a storage form of iron. So it should not be in the blood at very high levels. Somewhere maybe between 20 and 40 units in the blood is probably good. If it gets much higher than that, what it indicates is that you have tissue damage and tissue destruction, which is allowing the ferritin to dump into your bloodstream. And when the ferritin dumps into the bloodstream, then what happens is the ferritin protein releases the iron, and now you've got all this free iron floating around in the system, which is toxic. It's like putting fresh iron outside in the weather. It is going to create these free radical reactions and create all the damage. So iron is good when it's bound, but when it becomes free iron, it is toxic, highly toxic, okay? And so when you look at your serum iron levels, that serum iron level doesn't measure the free iron. So we have no idea how much free iron is floating around, but there is a good correlation that if your ferritin levels are rising, that means you're having more tissue damage. Ferritin is being dumped into the bloodstream. As that ferritin dumps into the bloodstream, you've got more free iron. So in that situation, before you ever take more iron, make sure you know what your ferritin levels are. If they're over 40 to, let's say 20 to 40, 45, 50, not much higher than that. If they're above that range, you do not want to be consuming more iron until you address what's causing the tissue damage. Okay?
And I see ferritin high a lot on my patient's blood work.
Yeah.
And it often correlates with a lot of the other inflammatory markers. Their C-reactive protein's usually high, their homocysteine's usually high. And, we just know that that's just promoting that systemic inflammation.
Yeah. And I just had a guy come in the other day who's got chronic inflammation. He says, I'm pretty, I eat a healthy diet, all this stuff. I took his ferritin level and it was 594. I'm telling you not higher than 40 or 50, and some people are saying that you shouldn't see it at all, but I don't think if it's too low, I think it tells us something else. But if it's that high, right, somebody might say, well, you're just storing a lot of it. Well, no, ferritin is in tissue. If it's high in blood, that means the tissues are being destroyed and it's dumping out, and all those free ions are creating the damage. And when you have all this oxidative stress, these free radical reactions occurring, one of the things it drives is insulin resistance and diabetes. So if you don't want to load more iron, because it may make you feel good temporarily, but then feed your chronic inflammatory state more damage to your thyroid gland, and it can be a real problem. So make sure iron, total iron binding capacity, percent saturation, and ferritin. And if those values are out of range, then you want to take a look at and work with somebody who understands the chemistry. You want to look at RBC magnesium, plasma zinc, copper, ceruloplasmin. Those things will be really helpful for a doctor to understand, who understands the chemistry of iron, to determine how to help you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're up.
Number 7, let's do people who are taking protein shakes or doing these, multi-level marketing type of health supplements out there that are pushing these protein powders for you to, replace a meal with a shake. The concept is, that I get what they're trying to do of, you are going to have this shake, so it's going to keep you from eating a full meal and overeating that. So you have this shake, but often the type of protein that is in these shakes is often soy protein, whey protein. It's usually some sort of very low quality protein that often can promote inflammation. And then even on the flip side of it, if you actually look at the amount of sugar that's in the majority of these, is astronomical. I've had patients bring them in. They're like, no, it's good. It's a good protein. It's low carb. And when they bring it in there, there's like 20 to 30 grams of sugar in just one scoop. And then on top of that, the majority of the time when they're making these shakes, they're throwing so much other stuff in there. They may throw a whole banana in there. They're throwing a whole bunch of berries in there. And when it's all said and done, that protein shake, which they're replacing a meal, could be very calorie and sugar dense, which again, we know promotes inflammation. And, there are better quality, I'm not against the idea of doing a shake, whether you're on the go for breakfast or you want to do it for a lunch, but you want to be sourcing a better source of protein. There's beef isolate proteins out there. You can get, if you tolerate eggs, there's egg white proteins, there's collagen proteins out there, which I don't, in moderation, I would say, with collagen protein, all this stuff is, you really want to be getting your protein from real sources. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that, the idea is good for on the go, but at the end of the day, you really want to be getting food-based protein as opposed to just drinking your calories.
Absolutely. And so I'll jump in there on a couple of things. One of those is, you hit it on the head. A lot of the protein sources are pretty lousy protein sources, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is, when they're processing it, many of the enzymes that you need to break those proteins down are denatured. So we've lost the enzyme portion of that. Most people who are in a chronic inflammatory state are diverting energy away from digestive enzyme production to systemic enzyme production. So you aren't making the enzymes to break it down efficiently, which leaves more undigested proteins for bacteria, yeast, and those things to overgrow and create problems. Mm-hmm. It's a poor source oftentimes. And many people who are chronically ill, and we talk about this all the time, are insulin resistant, right? Because part of that cell danger response, inflammatory response, is to decrease glucose transport into cells. And so people think, well, I'm not eating a lot of sugar, I'm going to have this processed protein. Well, if you can't, that protein breaks down into sugar as well and can create a problem. So most people don't need the protein shakes, the protein bars. They don't need those things. They're not well put together. Most are cheap forms of nutrients that aren't very digestible. There's things, especially in a lot of these supplements, and I just read a report the other day that titanium oxide, which is in a lot of nutrients and supplemental things and vitamins, is showing up in Alzheimer's patients. Is that good? Most people don't even know what's the stuff that's on the label. So I'm with you. Eat real food, and if you're struggling, take a diet. Most people who are in chronic inflammatory state probably need to take a digestive enzyme support to kind of help reduce the stress load of their body. Putting these foods in that they have a hard time digesting. Probably one of the best multivitamins that you can get is a good digestive enzyme. To eat good food, and that's even kind of hard to say because most of our food is not as nutrient dense as it once was, unless you're farming it and testing your soil for minerals and nutrients. And most people aren't. We just plant. So I would skip those things too. There's so many people I see who have chronic weight issues and chronic thyroid issues, and part of their daily ritual is this sugar-laden cheap protein shake, and they consume it, boom, and it goes down really fast and really quick. And what happens is they're still hungry, right? So either they get bloated because the stuff isn't digesting well, and they say, well, I feel full for the whole day. It's probably improper digestion causing the bloating, or they consume it in so fast that the brain doesn't have time to register that they're satisfied, and now they're off looking for something else. So skip the cheap protein forms. There are some good forms. You know, we have a favorite company that we get a lot of our enzymes from. They have a really good plant-based protein powder with added digestive enzymes to help you break down the protein. So I think that's a great source. And so, you know, US Enzymes Protein, some people are looking for an animal-based one, but from a vegetarian-based protein source, I love it. I think it tastes great. The key thing for me is it has those digestive enzymes in it.
Yeah, I think that's patients often ask me, you know, what supplements do I need to be on? And I often tell them, look, my goal is to get you down to maybe a bare minimum digestive enzyme, because that can just help to, I mean, if you can digest your food better, you're getting all your vitamins and minerals and nutrients a little bit easier in the system.
You take some salts, right? Eat good food and a digestive enzyme. If you get most people down to that, we're in pretty good shape and not a lot of else. You know, if those things were already in the foods, we probably wouldn't even tell them to do those things, right? But they're just avoid. All right, so I'm up, right?
Yep.
I talked about iron. All right, high dose antioxidants. So you have chronic inflammation and you have oxidative stress. And so maybe you've read or you've been told by your doctor to take a vitamin E or vitamin C or high dose glutathione or take SOD. All of those things can help. They're all antioxidants. They can be beneficial. Here's the problem. If you have oxidative stress, which we all do, and you want to take an SOD supplement, SOD will break down one of those free radicals that's something called superoxide. The problem is it's one and done, okay? And after you get done converting superoxide, this free radical, that superoxide now needs to be recycled, or it becomes a problem, and it produces another potential free radical, which is hydrogen peroxide. And so you say, well, then I'm going to take high dose glutathione too. Okay, glutathione will break down the hydrogen peroxide, which is awesome. It's good. The problem is now that glutathione becomes a reduced form or an oxidized form and a free radical itself, and it needs to be addressed. So then you can say, well, all right, well then I'll take high dose vitamin C, and you can do that, but it too then has to be recycled. So I think sometimes in short-term doses, these things are good, but if you just take one antioxidant by itself, it has an intended benefit to reduce a substance, but we have to be careful because it may produce another free radical, and it's in itself can become a free radical. So I think for most people, don't megadose on these things, especially for extended periods of times. Your best bet is to eat real foods that can really help support and stimulate the natural antioxidant system naturally, which can recycle itself if we have the minerals and the nutrients that cycle needs. And one of the best sources to regulate your natural antioxidant system there's a number of foods. Curcumin can do it, but one of the most potent upregulators of what we call the natural antioxidant system, the NRF2 pathway, is something called broccoli sprouts. And so there's broccoli seeds that you put in the ground and turn into sprouts, which are the baby broccoli plants, and then the baby broccoli turns into this big plant. But if you ate the sprouts and grew them in your house or in your garden, ate those little 3-inch sprouts, those sprouts have components in them, something called glucoraphanin myrosinase, that makes sulforaphane, and sulforaphane is the biggest upregulator from plant-based foods that drive your natural antioxidant system. So you can save hundreds of dollars a month in antioxidant vitamins and not create issues by consuming more broccoli sprouts. Okay, so don't load up.
That's huge. And the thing is a lot of these patients will, they write on their paperwork, they're on all these antioxidants, and I'm like, how long have you been on that? They're like, years. And I'm like, are you any better? No. Then why are you taking it? And so that's, I do believe, like, I agree with you that they're good in small amounts. If you feel like you were exposed to something and you take them for, a week or so just to kind of knock something down, or you're feel like you're getting sick, you ramp that kind of up, or, small doses. But it's not meant to live off. That's just as bad as taking a medication and expecting it to fix a problem. You're just putting a Band-Aid on it. Yeah, you feel good when you're on it, but it may be creating all these other things down the road that are unintentional.
Right. And so I don't think even your docs may not be they're not trying to harm you intentionally. They may just not understand the long-term implications. But again, we're treating more symptom than we are cause. And we really want to help you get the cause. So you're on number 9. What do you got?
Mindset. I think this is huge. You may be doing it and you don't even realize it. You get up in the morning, you're achy, you don't feel good, you're tired, you're fatigued, and you may be telling yourself every day, oh, I'm not getting any better, whether you're trying to actively get your health managed or maybe it's even just weight loss. You wake up every day and you're beating yourself up thinking, oh, I'm never going to lose this weight, or I'm never going to get healthier. Oh man, I feel terrible today. I'm a big believer that you move towards things you think about. And if you think that you're never getting better, or you think that you're feeling terrible, you are. I mean, that's what you're moving towards. So I think you need to get up every day, and whether you write down your goals or you do some affirmations to say, I'm getting healthier and healthier every day, moving towards getting healthy. You need to think about that. I'm getting healthy. These are the things that I'm doing. Focus on the stuff that you have control over and that you're making the changes for. And mindset goes a long way with people. Often the patients that are the hardest to help are the ones who don't think they're going to ever get any better, or they don't deserve to get any better, just because they have that mindset that's kind of toxic.
And I agree. I mean, I think mindset's huge, and it's easy for us to say you got to reduce the stinking thinking, but when you're chronically ill, it can really contribute. Your mindset can really contribute to it. And I think one of the things that happens is people beat themselves up because they're not getting well fast enough, right? They're not losing weight fast enough. They're not getting symptoms go away fast enough. When you're trying to heal and repair, especially it's been a 5, 10, 20, 30, 40-year process of getting sick and getting ill, you got to remember that chemistry doesn't change that fast. And I try and help my patients understand that if it happens fast, it's probably not going to last, right? So we can lose weight fast, it never lasts, right? We can take something that quickly changes. Wow, I take that glutathione, I feel awesome, right? But if you did it really fast, it's probably not going to last that long, right? That you get that short-term boost. So mindset, if you got sick, it took you a long time, most times to get sick. It's going to take you some time to get better. So don't think about this more as a long-term, endurance event and not a short sprint, right? You need to make sure that you're thinking long set. Am I doing all the right things to improve my health and well-being? And am I giving myself enough time to get better and not beating myself up about it? So I think that's a great point. All right, so I'll do the last one, right, for today. I think we can do another one of these. I talked about salt. All right, I'll touch on this one. I was going to do a different one, but I'm going to do this one. And that is, so many people are told that the reason they're struggling with weight issues and health problems is that they eat too much and they don't exercise enough. And so we talked a little bit about the eating part, but it's the exercise portion that I often have to tell people, you got to chill. Because people think that if they do an hour of exhaustive cardiovascular exercise or the latest boot camp phase in the gym, that's going to help them get better. If you have chronic inflammation and you're doing cardio, long-term cardio at what we call the black hole zone, where you're not in a fat burning mode and you're pushing and really forcing that anaerobic metabolism, that you're contributing to your health issues. So you're not going to, 60 minutes on the treadmill is probably at high intensity is not going to help you. It's probably going to contribute to your issues and your challenges and your problems. Strength training, probably one of the best things you can do, but you don't need to go to the and do an hour-and-a-half boot camp of trying to do strength training and cardio, it's probably not going to help you. So you want to exercise, you want to strength train, you want to do some cardiovascular type of activities, but you have to do those reasonably when you're sick and you're struggling with chronic inflammatory conditions, so that you don't drive more inflammation. Every activity, exercise you do is going to drive inflammation. That's normal. It's a healthy process that stimulates things called your stem cells to help reduce the inflammation, clean up the damage, and help you repair. But if you are already chronically inflamed, which most of you are, and that inflammation already isn't being managed well, and then do daily exhaustive exercises that ramp up the inflammation, is not going to help you. It's actually going to make you worse. So be active, go for a walk, keep your heart rate down, but be active, be mobile. If you're going to strength train, do it, but don't do it for extended periods of time. Short, intense bursts where you work the muscles, you work them intensely, and then give yourself 2-3 days, especially after strength training, to recover, because that recovery piece is going to take longer when you're sick.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I think that's good. I mean, exercise is good. There's that fine line between moving and getting blood flow and stimulating endorphins and neurotransmitters and overdoing it. You really just have to listen to your body. I think that's a good kind of indicator sometimes. Yeah.
And if you're, the results are your indicator, right? So if you're doing all this exhaustive stuff and you're like, I'm gaining weight, I'm not losing weight, I don't feel any better, I'm exhausted, look at your results. If you're losing weight, you're feeling fit and toned and you're sleeping fantastic, then you're probably doing the right thing. But if you're not, you might be overdoing it. So be really, really careful. Okay. So I think we got 10 in. That's good. We got it in the time frame. So we'll sign off for today. As always, if you have any questions regarding thyroid challenges, problems, put them in the comments below. And we will get back to you. I know I've answered a few this week came in from the last podcast. We're always looking for more questions, more concerns that you have. And one of the things I haven't talked to you, Dr. Eric, about, but one of the things I thought we might do is ask some people to is do some live interviews maybe with some people and have them come on the podcast. Just one of the viewers, have them come in. We can kind of talk about what's going on, what their experience has been, and maybe give them a little bit of support in their process, so they can ask whatever live questions they have, and maybe we may be able to help 1 or 2 listeners in a podcast. So that may be something we might do in the future.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think that's a great idea.
All right. So Dr. Erica, where can they find you?
You can go to brainandbodyhealthcenter.com to find me. You can also find us on Instagram at Doctors Riggleman. And then we have a YouTube channel, Doctors Riggleman, where we have lots of cooking demonstration videos and lots of videos on there that you can check out.
Awesome. And you can find me at Thyroid Answers Podcast, thyroidproblemsdoctor.com, Chronic Condition Recovery Center. And if you Google Dr. Balcavage or Chronic Condition Recovery Center on Vimeo or YouTube, you will see lots and lots of videos on thyroid physiology and now some stuff on stem cell therapy, which is what both of us have added to our practice. And we're going to do a podcast on how stem cell therapy can help people with immune, inflammatory, autoimmune conditions. So that'll be coming up as well. All right. So we're going to sign off. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please go to YouTube or iTunes. And if you like the podcast, put some information in there. Tell us how good you are, 4 or 5-star review, 10-star review, whatever the max review is, put that in there if it's appropriate. And if you have some concerns where you think, I want to hear this, I want to hear that, let us know. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Dr. Erica, have a great day and have a great vacation, because I know you're going away. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Take care. See ya.